Around John F. Kennedy, around the halls. This is Cougar TV in Belmore, New York.
On May 22nd, 2025, I arrived at the Eisenhower Aquatic Center to take my lifeguard certification exam. I was confident and ready. No goggles, no worries. I haven't been swimming since my prerequisite test the month prior, but I did so great in them I had no doubts about taking another. I was about to become a certified lifeguard. And then, it happened. During the 200-meter swim, I heard a whistle. I looked up, and the proctor told me I failed. I was so embarrassed. I got out of the pool, ashamed, humiliated, and worst of all, I felt defeat. The next day, I decided to give up on lifeguarding. I searched for jobs as a camp counselor, waitress, and in retail. However, as I searched the internet for work, I found no motivation. It was a sign. I needed to continue my pursuit for lifeguarding, but I wasn't ready. And then, a few days later, I was having a conversation with my dad about swimming and lifeguarding. He was a previous college diver and lifeguard. He reminded me that swimming in general is hard. It requires hard work and repeated practice. He also told me that I didn't have to become a lifeguard if I didn't want to. But if I decided to continue that journey, he'd make sure I passed that test. This conversation was my motivating factor. It destroyed my feelings of defeat and led to my journey of becoming a better swimmer. The next day, I showed up at Eisenhower Park, bought a leisure pass, and rescheduled my next test. The date was set for June 3rd. I had less than 2 weeks to prepare. From that day on, I went to the pool every night when my dad got home from work. I swam around 50 laps, there and back, every time. Every lap I swam hurt. Every night after school was a battle. But as I kept practicing, my form and speed increased, and by the end of those 12 days, I was a much better swimmer. When June 3rd came around, I flew through the test, swimming with amazing form and speed. The proctor even suggested I join her swim team. I felt accomplished and successful, but the test didn't end there. This summer was a real challenge. As a part of my job as a lifeguard at Inwood Beach Club, I was required to give swim lessons to young kids and supervise the pool. By the end of the summer, I ended up giving swimming lessons to 7 kids consecutively. All the coaching techniques and skills my dad used to teach me, I relayed to these kids, and by the end of the summer, they were all much better swimmers. Also, I ended up saving 3 people that summer. The first incident occurred when a little girl was left in the pool with no parent. She was drowning. I jumped in the pool and secured her safety. The second incident occurred when 2 boys were roughly pushing each other under the water. I separated them and removed them from the pool. So, when I look back at May 22nd, I realized I walked in with confidence, but it wasn't really confidence. It's false confidence. It's arrogance. I thought I was ready, but I wasn't. That whistle, that failure, changed everything. It destroyed my arrogance and led to confidence. It wasn't just about passing a test, it's about earning it. It's about the 12 days of endless swimming. It's about the lesson from my dad. And June 3rd, that was not the real test. The real test was a little girl and those 2 boys. I didn't just have a certification, I had skills. I didn't have to think, I just acted. So, it's really easy to be embarrassed by your failures. I was. But that whistle, that failure, was the best thing that could ever happen to me. Our failures are not the end. They're the beginnings. They're not the opposite of success. They're the path to success. It's what we do in the face of failure. That's the real test. Thank you.
And I have good luck. Well, actually, not technically. Exactly. I've never found money on the floor. A ladybug has never appeared on my hand. I've never randomly found a four-leaf clover, and if I were to buy a lottery ticket, I'd most definitely lose. Yet, I'd consider myself lucky, but this wasn't always the case. Growing up, I hated when people would ask me if I had any siblings. I would always answer, yes, 2 older sisters, Rebecca and Michaela. Then, the next inevitable question, how old are they? I would usually lie. 4 and 6 years older, I'd say, but this couldn't be farther from the truth. I was scared to admit that Rebecca was 14 years older than me and Michaela was 12 years older than me. On the off chance where I shared the truth, millions of questions would follow. Questions I didn't necessarily want to answer. Do you like having such older sisters? Are they your full siblings? Do you ever see your sisters? I'd have to explain I was what my parents called a pleasant surprise. And yes, I see my sisters, and yes, they are my full siblings. While everyone else was going to the playground, movies, and arcade with their siblings, I was going to my sister's wedding dress fittings, white coat ceremonies, engagement parties, and to meet their new babies in the hospital. Although I adored my sisters, I hated feeling so different. A perfect example. On the day after the last day of 5th grade, my friends asked me to go to the beach with them, but I couldn't. I was meeting my new nephew in the hospital. Becoming an aunt at 10 became a whole different story. Judah was born on June 23rd, 2018, and being his aunt is one of my favorite titles. At 17, I now have 5 nieces and 1 nephew, and I wouldn't change it for the world. But 7 years ago, this wasn't always the case. I was so scared of being different, although this wasn't really in my control. Not only was I scared of being different and telling people a general fact about me, I was sad about it. I missed having my sisters at the dining room table, in the room next door, and to watch movies with. My mom always tells the story of when I begged her not to let them get married. I loved everything about them, especially how loved they made me feel. I was the center of their attention. When they went to college and got married, I was sad at first. I felt I was no longer part of their lives, but they were still such a large part of mine. But this couldn't be farther from the truth. Rebecca brought me everywhere. Her and her now husband would often refer to me as their rent-a-kid, and I would spend the weekends with them at their apartment in the West Village. Michaela was also the best. Although she yelled at me a little more than Rebecca, she brought me to her cool big girl jobs in the city, Adventureland, Broadway. My sisters still made so much time for me, despite their busy lives. And as I got older, I realized maybe being different isn't such a bad thing. I've learned so much from them, and would definitely not be the person I am today without them. The 2 of them have created every part of who I am. They are the best friends I could have ever asked for. They're there for every fashion crisis, anytime I need help with schoolwork, and they always answer the group FaceTime when Mom and Dad are being annoying. They've also taught me a lot. For example, when Michaela was a senior in high school and she scratched her car in the parking lot, she brought me along to buy spray paint to hide it from my dad. I honestly feel like that was a really valuable lesson. But the most valuable lesson of them all, I learned that what made me different is what made me so incredibly lucky. I've never found money on the floor, but I do have 2 amazing sisters and 2 amazing brother-in-laws. I get to watch my nephew and nieces grow up and be such a huge part of their lives. And so I am Isabel Meeser, and I have good luck.
M&M's or Reese's Pieces, Brandy Melville or Addicted, Starbucks or nothing. Life is full of choices. Some easier than others. For me, I've debated a lot of things in life. Some things as simple as what I'm going to eat for dinner, or what color I'm going to get my nails done. Others more complicated, like choosing the courses I should take in high school that will look good on my college application, or what prom dress I'm going to wear. But perhaps the hardest decision I had to make was in 6th grade. I loved sleepaway camp. I had been going to Green Lane for 2 summers. It was my home away from home. Each year, I would mark up the days on my calendar, counting down until I could go off for 7 weeks to the place where I was happiest. The sound of the rebel light trumpet each morning, the smell of sundew through the air, the late night campfires that felt like they could go on forever. My friends felt like family, the kind of people you could laugh with all night long. I remember singing songs we never got tired of, and the excitement of knowing it was our turn to get our favorite treats from canteen. When I was at camp, nothing else in the world mattered to me. It was freedom. It was adventure. It was my happy place. But then, there was my other world, softball. If you know me, you know softball is a huge part of my life. I've been playing ball since I could hold a bat. From t-ball to baseball, the minor leagues to the major leagues, travel ball to school ball, I've played them all. But my favorite place is behind home plate. Ever since I was little, I was the girl with the baggy, oversized red gear. I could barely see through my mask, and my shin guards were bulky, but I loved every second of it. I loved the thrill of throwing out a runner, getting a hit in an important spot of the game, and the joy of winning a championship game. There was no better feeling. Both camp and softball were huge parts of my life. Camp was one world I loved, and softball was another I couldn't live without. And suddenly, those two worlds collided. The camp that I loved and the sport that I lived for were now happening at the same time. Now, I had to make the decision. Was I going to go to sleepaway camp, my summer home, or was I going to stay home from camp to focus on playing softball? Well, here's the deal. If I stayed home from camp, I would basically be giving up an entire summer of fun, laughter, and 7 weeks without my parents nagging me. If I went to camp, I would basically be giving up my softball career. I remember sitting at the kitchen table going back and forth between the two options. I knew I'd be happy with whichever one I chose, but I didn't want it to be the wrong choice. Summertime was approaching, and I knew I needed to make a decision soon. It felt like my whole childhood was on the table, and my future was at hand. My camp friends on one side, my softball goal on the other. I wanted both. I wanted the best of both worlds. But that's not how life works, is it? People like to think that they can do it all, and in some cases, that's true. But in most cases, life makes us choose, and that's when we learn what sacrifice really means. I chose softball, and at first, I wasn't sure if it was the right decision. I told myself I would stay home from camp that summer to give travel softball a chance, and then I could go back to camp the next summer if I wanted to. But that summer never came. Instead, I spent my summer sweating on the field, practicing under the sun, and training for long hours almost every day. And I'll be honest, there are moments where I miss going to camp. But every time I stepped onto that field, I knew I had made that decision. It was for my teammates, my passion, and my drive to get better every day. Choosing softball taught me more than just how to hit, throw, or catch. It taught me invaluable lessons that I carry with me when making tough decisions. If I didn't choose softball, I never would be where I am as a catcher today. That summer I made my big decision, I met a coach that changed my trajectory as a catcher. Training with him led me to becoming the starting catcher on the varsity softball team as an 8th grader. Making that decision all those years ago allowed me to be a part of an incredible experience when the Kennedy softball team won the Long Island Championship. Looking back now, I realized something important. I didn't lose camp. I simply went in a different direction. We like to torture ourselves over the what ifs. What if I made a mistake? What if the other choice was better? I sat at the kitchen table trying to find the one right path. But that's not how it works. There wasn't a right or wrong answer at the table. There was just a choice. And the moment I chose, that choice became the right one. Not because it was destined, but because I made it right. I made it right with every early morning practice, every hit, and every out at the plate. Life isn't all planned out. You're the one who plans it. And in the end, remember, you are where you're meant to be. Thank you.
I grew up drinking cha, Indian tea, for as long as I can remember. In In my home, cha was not just a drink, it was an event. It would hit 3 p.m., my grandparents would come over and ask, "Who wants cha?" Every afternoon, the sound of boiling water and clinking teacups filled the kitchen. The air turned rich with the smell of black tea leaves, cardamom, cloves, black pepper, ginger, cinnamon, and sugar. Here's what you should know about cha. It is not instant tea. You cannot just rush it. First, the spices are boiled slowly in water, and then again after adding milk until the color deepens to that perfect shade of caramel brown. It is both a recipe and tradition that has withstood the test of time, not just because it tastes good, but because it brings my family together. You see, the first part of the ritual is not even about drinking the tea. It is waiting. For about 15 minutes, everyone gathers while the cha slowly simmers on the stove. No one's scrolling through their phone or hurrying out the door. We just wait, together. And in that waiting, something happens. Someone starts a story, someone else asks a question. Conversations flow more easily when you know you're going to be sitting there for a while. The kitchen fills with laughter and sometimes quiet reflection. And before long, the tea is poured into fancy teacups that have probably been in the family for generations. Then comes the second part, sitting and drinking together. That half hour after the cha is poured becomes something special. It is where my family and even my friends talk about their days, their challenges, and their projects. It is where I learn about the world through stories and through listening. Around those teacups, I learned that cha is not just about flavor, it is about being present. When I think about it now, those afternoons were a kind of education. No classrooms, no grades, no pressure. Just people sharing what they knew. My grandfather would share stories of him growing up. A memorable one, for instance, was when he caught a cobra in his neighbor's backyard and walked a mile with it before he let it loose. My grandmother would make small talk about anything and everything while she served us a new snack she made, making sure we ate every single bite of it. My favorite memories are when my brother's friends would come over and my mom would serve us cha as they talked about the fun times that they had at college. Or when my cousin's engagement party with a house full of 40 people, the first thing that was served was cha to each and every person, young to old. It created a sense of belonging and welcomed everyone to the start of the event. Whether we were having a long day or we were sick, we always sit down to have a cup of cha. Cha time is also when we talk about our days, work on ideas for projects, or even plan where our next big vacation will be. And I learned, not from being taught, but from simply being there and in the moment. That's the quiet beauty of the cha ritual. It reminds us that learning does not only come from books or screens, it comes from listening to others, to stories, and to the rhyme of life itself. The tea, with its blend of spices, is what is healthy for the body, but the act of drinking it together is what is healthy for the soul. It forces us to pause in a world that never stops moving. It allows us to slow down, connect, and notice one another. It is timeless. The same recipe that my grandparents made is the one that I make today. Across decades, continents, and generations, this simple ritual has stayed the same. Because, while our world keeps changing, it is our customs that help us to stay grounded. Every culture has something like this. For some, it's a coffee break. For others, it's a family dinner or a religious ceremony. Or maybe it's not even cultural. Maybe it's something like an evening walk with a friend. But the idea is the same, an intentional moment to slow down and share life with others. For me, that moment is a cup of cha on most afternoons. Even now, when I make cha for myself, I try to remember the lessons learned and the memories that we shared. So next time you make tea or coffee, sit for a family dinner, go on an evening walk with a friend, or whatever your version of cha may be, don't rush it. Wait as it brews, invite someone to join you, and notice what happens when you stop hurrying and start being present. Because sometimes the best lessons in life are learned over a warm cup of cha. Thank you.
I'll never forget the Knicks game against the Pacers on May 29th. I sat courtside and looked to my right and realized Kylie Jenner was sitting a few seats away, so of course I had to take a picture. During my time going to the Knicks games, I've had conversations with Jalen Brunson and Josh Hart. One night, after a huge win, Obi Toppin handing his game-worn autographed sneakers. I've seen Timothée Chalamet, Spike Lee, Ben Stiller, Chris Rock, and so many more celebrities. There's nothing like going to a Knicks game. Trust me, I've been to many. My family has had courtside seats in Section 8 since 2016, and believe me, I'm obsessed. When I go to a Knicks game, nothing else matters. Madison Square Garden is electric. There's a reason they call it the Mecca. I'll admit, the perks are pretty cool, moments like that. The celebrities, the sneakers, the photos, they're unforgettable. But here's the thing, that's not the best part. Of all the celebrities, of all the athletes, of all the people I've seen at the Garden, the most important person is the one sitting next to me, my dad. You see, I am full-on don't text me in the fourth quarter obsessed New York Knicks fan, and my dad and I have been going to games together for as long as I can remember. When I was little, I didn't know half the rules. I just knew that whenever the Knicks scored, my dad would throw his hands in the air and cheer, and I'd copy him, even if I had no idea what just happened. Over the years, it became our thing. No matter how busy life got, we always made time for the Garden. It didn't matter if the Knicks were winning or losing, and believe me, we've seen a lot of both. Those few hours belong to us. We have shared some special moments together at Madison Square Garden. The Knicks' 38-point win against the Celtics in the playoffs, watching pre-game warm-ups, and taking selfies with Steph Curry. And yeah, I'm usually going with my phone now, snapping pictures, recording videos, posting everything on Instagram. My dad sometimes gets annoyed and tells me to put the phone down and just watch the game. But for me, it's not about being distracted. It's about saving those memories, because one day I'll look back at them and remember exactly how it felt to be there. As I've gotten older, I've realized that the Knicks have given me more than highlight plays or autographs. They've given me 1,000 tiny moments with my dad that I'll never forget. People always say sport brings people together, but for me, that's not just a cliche. It's my life. This isn't really about basketball. It's about taking the time to do the things you love with the people you love doing them with. We all have that thing, that Knicks game, that one place or one person that just clicks. So often, we get busy with it, we'll do it later. We get so busy in capturing the moment, we forget to live in it. The Knicks might not always win, they might break our hearts, but every time I walk outside of Madison Square Garden with my dad smiling, laughing, like every moment in our head, I realize that I already won. Because in the end, the best part of being a Knicks fan isn't about the players, or the seats, or the sneakers. It's the time. It's the memories. It's the joy of sitting next to my dad in the world's most famous arena, watching our team together. Thank you.
Every day, no matter how good or bad my day was, my dog Marley was at the door, tail wagging, toy in her mouth, acting like seeing me was the highlight of her entire existence. And the thing is, she didn't care about anything I stressed about that day. Not my grades, not how I played lacrosse, or the quiz maybe I didn't do so great on. All she cared about is that I was home. I think that's where the idea that this talk came from, but at a certain point, I realized Marley understood something about life that I honestly didn't. Take walking her, for example. Marley has to sniff everything. Every blade of grass, every random stick, and every mailbox. Even in the pouring rain, or the freezing cold, or where I had somewhere to be. I used to tug on her leash, begging her to keep going. But after a certain point, I realized Marley wasn't in a rush, and that I didn't need to be either. I'm not going to act like she's some wise, calm dog. This is the same dog who once ate an entire tub of grapes, which are poisonous for dogs. And when she just sat there, like nothing had happened, we were all there panicked, trying to call the vets. She also once ate 3 socks, 3 whole socks. And I'm still not entirely sure where the 4th one is, and I don't really want to know. But even through the chaos, Marley's been able to teach me something without even really meaning to. I was living my life like it was one huge deadline. My days felt like one big sprint, going from class to practice to homework to whatever disaster my siblings were doing, sleep, repeat. Always focused on the next big thing, the next big test, the next big class, the next big thing that would stress me out. Marley taught me it's okay to slow down. Not in a be lazy kind of way, just in a don't rush your entire life kind of way. Because when I actually focused on what I was doing right now, everything else got easier. When I paid attention in class instead of worrying about the test on Friday, I did better. And when I focused on the rep during practice instead of worrying about the game on Saturday, I played better. Doing the little things made the big things easier. But we live in a world so focused on speed. Fast results, fast schedules, fast everything. Marley lives the opposite way. She wakes up in the morning like she just won the lottery because the sun rose again. And her biggest decision in the morning is deciding whether to go on a walk or eat breakfast. Meanwhile, humans are like, I'll be happy once I get that grade, once I survive the week, once I finish that stuff. But dogs don't wait to be happy, they just are. So, at the end of the day, I think an important lesson that we can take from my dog is that it's important to live in the moment, enjoy the small things, and live in the moment, enjoy the small things, and not overthink everything. And I think if we all did those, we'd all be better people. Thank you.
Take a look at these two lines. Don't think too hard. There's no secret optical illusion. One line is curvy and the other is straight. While both lines reach the same endpoint, the curvy line takes about twice the distance as the straight line does to get there. The curvy line is lost, distracted by forces pushing it in every direction. The straight line, on the other hand, is direct, confident, and can even be powerful in decision-making. Let me explain. As a single word, straight line only really refers to one thing. And it's not art, but skiing, which just so happens to be my favorite pastime. If you draw a straight line down a mountain's fall line, a daring skier can follow this path with confident strides. At age 13, that someone was not me. I was down here, at the bunny slope. I was the only teenager at ski school amidst a horde of 5-year-olds whose parents probably groomed them to ski as soon as they took their first steps. I used to wish to be a part of this quintessential ski family, one that takes near weekly excursions to the mountains, giving ample time for their children to develop into advanced skiers, all while skiing together with their kids as a group to provide the constant comfort of familiarity. I didn't have this upbringing. For me, the fact that I had no skiing predecessor, no impetus to inspire me, made skiing all the more appealing. The solitude of the snow spoke to me as if everything else going on in my life had gone silent, allowing me to finally focus my attention on one single thing. Except I was really, really bad at it. As a beginner skier, I was at the bottom rung of the ladder. Hiring instructors to tackle my physical lack of ability was only half the battle. I had a mental block. Those 5-year-olds and ski family children were born to straight line each new run. But me, I had no sense of measuring risk. If I fell, it wasn't like my parents could come pick me up and coddle me from the lodge. As a result, I learned some valuable lessons about confronting challenges from skiing, and they had everything to do with straight line. I stood at the top of Nor'easter, a simple blue trail at Ski Sundown in Connecticut. Not exactly a world-class destination, I know. To a friend I was skiing with, this was just another trail. But to me, even behind my nonchalant, "Oh, that run looks cool," of approval, it stoked a visceral reaction. My vocal cords tensed and my heart raced, but I mustered the courage to overlook the start of the trail. It looked far more menacing from the top than it did even from the chairlift. Most of all, I thought about my skiing progression. One half of me remembered that I'd never done a trail this steep. The other half acknowledged that I'd never improve if I didn't undertake the challenge of the next hardest trail, over and over again. I thought about how skiers straight line without hesitation. With this in mind, I took off down the trail, my wide, gentle turns guiding me down. I even began to straight line once I gained control over my movements. Until I fell head first. As it turned out, skiing puts the extreme in the term extreme sport. I realized that I don't recommend physically straight lining the most daunting trail you've ever descended, but the idea of straight lining is meant to encourage you to push yourself. When I finally made it down without falling, I was consumed with pride. Up until a young boy hollered from the chairlift that I was a Jerry from my bad form. FYI, a Jerry is a derogatory skiing term that refers to a clueless skier who's a hazard to everybody else on the mountain. This is the art of skiing. Knowing you'll fail, but still challenging yourself to fail better and better each time. Straight lining through obstacles to surmount them, no matter what. As I graduated toward black ones, trails posed new challenges I never could have imagined existed. Each steep trail I approached created a new pit in my stomach. I looked down into an abyss. Still, I mentally prepared myself by forcing myself to inch down the first few segments. But soon I was once again straight lining down the fall line, wanting more. Whether it was a 35-degree pitch, a descent filled with 3-foot moguls, or a tree-lined glade where even a single mishap could plunge me into a tree trunk, I had an insatiable desire to conquer each run. When I head to the mountain, I seek out new kinds of descents I've never tried before. The beauty is that every run is unique, giving me endless opportunities to chase more thrilling challenges. In some ways, skiing is remarkably similar to real life. It's filled with unprecedented opportunities, each different from the last. The key is to confront them head on, like a straight line. If you told me 5 years ago I'd become an advanced skier, I'd say, no way, I'm too chicken for that. The point is, no matter your age, your starting skills, or your level of fear, you can achieve the most far-fetched things you can imagine, step by step, and enjoy the process along the way. It took me over 350,000 vertical feet, but you never know where you'll end up unless you try that thing that's been on your mind. I made it to the top of Mont Gelais, a world-renowned backcountry ski mountain in the Swiss Alps, and you can too, as long as you choose to start. Basically, my advice is to ignore those inner butterflies and just straight line it. Thank you.
Growing up, every girl has a favorite Disney princess. Mine was Elsa. I've seen the Frozen movie hundreds of times. In Disney, and for Halloween, I dressed up as Elsa, and every waking moment of every day, I would be singing Let It Go. It was a huge part of my childhood, and I dreamed of being like my favorite Disney princess as every other girl did. Elsa's love for her sibling, her problem-solving skills, but most importantly, the perseverance through the challenge with her icy hands. This is a challenge I never thought I would have to face. I remember it like it was yesterday. My 8th grade lacrosse team and I are practicing in the weather that every athlete dreads, the freezing rain. I'm running down the field, and all of a sudden, my lacrosse stick drops to the ground, and I look down at my hands, and they're completely pale. I had no clue what was going on, and I was standing on the field in a state of shock, as my teammates and coaches rushed to me as I was frozen in fear. I ran into the building to warm up my hands and to call my parents. Right after practice, my parents took me to my pediatrician, who then sent me to the lab for blood work. A lot of blood work. They drew 12 tubes of blood, and the doctors had a feeling I had something called Raynaud's syndrome. Raynaud's syndrome is a condition in which blood vessels in the fingers and toes react to cool temperatures and stress. These small vessels tighten so much that blood can no longer flow and your fingers lose color. First white, then blue, then red again, as they finally warm up. Although Raynaud's cannot be shown through blood work, there are several different autoimmune diseases that can be shown through blood work, and this instilled so much fear on my mind, on top of all my other questions and concerns which I was already having, such as, is this a major health concern? Will I ever be able to play soccer or lacrosse ever again? Is this going to change my life forever? After the days of waiting for my results, which felt like an eternity, they finally came back. Normal. The doctors concluded that I had Raynaud's syndrome, and that from this blood work, it wasn't connected to any other illness, but it could be developed to be in the future. When I found out this news, the first emotion I felt was pure, utter frustration. It felt so unfair that something just as simple as the cold weather could potentially take away something that meant the world to me. Sports. Playing soccer in the fall and lacrosse in the early spring became a challenge, but I learned how to manage it. I started carrying hand warmers with me wherever I went and wearing gloves under all my gear. Now, when my hands turn pale, numb, and causing pain, I don't panic. I know what's going on, I take a breath, I warm them up, and I keep going. I've learned that my icy hands do not define who I am, but it's my response that does. When my hands turn pale, I think back to Elsa. Elsa didn't choose to have her icy powers. It was something she had to control and learn to live with. When I was younger, I admired her because she had powers, and she was magical to me. But now, I admire her for something real. Resilience and strength. In reality, you never know what somebody's going through. Everybody has something that makes them feel different, or a challenge they need to overcome. Maybe it's a health condition like mine, maybe it's stress, or maybe it's a challenge that we don't want to talk about. I've learned that these challenges do not define us, but it's our response and the growth that we take from these challenges that do define who we are. So, whatever your
icy hands are, whatever challenge or setback may come your way, don't let it freeze you. Learn from it, grow from it, and persevere. Just like Elsa, sometimes you have to remember that the cold never bothered you anyway. And sometimes all you need to do is let it go. Thank you.
Before we begin, I'd like to apologize to anyone who has seen this face during a cheer competition. You didn't deserve that kind of jump scare. And honestly, it gets worse. Here's another one. And another. Or even this one. At this point, you think it's bad timing or a camera malfunction, but no, that's just my cheer face. Every competition, I'm the one with the big grin and the wide eyes. The face everyone loves a screenshot and sends to me later saying, "Chloe, why do you look like that?" Unfortunately, these faces live forever in text messages. Or because Miss Leonardo loves to post the worst ones on Instagram. Thanks, Coach. But the truth is, the smile wasn't always real. Let's start with the word cheer. As an adjective, it means to be happy or full of energy. But as a sport, cheerleading is so much more. It isn't just pom-poms and sidelines at football games. It's reps, teamwork, counting 5, 6, 7, 8 till they don't sound like numbers anymore, and pretending you can just fall on your teammate's face. At our competitions, every moment has to be perfect. Sharp motions, clean tumbling, stunt hitting without even a wobble. Cheer is literally in the name, cheerleading, and that means leading others with spirit and a smile, even when you're exhausted, even when you're terrified, because sometimes that smile is just an act. Before I was a cheerleader here, I lived in East Meadow. Even though I only moved a few towns away, it felt like starting completely over. New school, new people, new everything. And to top it off, I made varsity cheer as a freshman. I was surrounded by older girls who knew exactly what they were doing. And I knew where the mat was, sometimes. But really, I was just the youngest, the loudest, and the most confused. So I put on the cheer face. It was easier to fake confidence than to admit I felt lost. I walked the halls with the same mask I wore on the mat. Chin up, smile on, pretend you belong. Then came counties, the moment we all swore would be our big payoff. We trained like crazy. Long practices, bruises everywhere, running the routine so many times I could probably do in my sleep. And then, we lost. It was devastating. We knew how much we had all put in. But, looking back, that was the moment my mask started to slip. In a good way, because we didn't fall apart. We got angry, we got determined, and we did it together. By the time we got to regionals, something had clicked. We ended up placing first among all of our competitors and fourth in the nation for our division. But the win wasn't the best part. It was that I realized I wasn't faking it anymore. I didn't just wear a cheer face for the judges. I started to actually feel the happiness behind it. Practices didn't feel like work anymore. They became the best 2 hours of my day. I started looking forward to the chaotic competition mornings, the strong smell of hairspray, and the crazy nerves. I looked forward to the moment right before we took the mat when Coach gave us that look and the music started. Through all of this, cheers taught me more than just how to stunt or tumble. It taught me about resilience. It's about showing up with energy and commitment even when you feel lost, and doing it over and over again until the confidence becomes real. I went from being the new girl who felt completely alone to someone who found her family on the mat. My smile today isn't a performance, it's real. And no, the takeaway is not that you all need to smile like this. Please don't. One of me is enough. It's this. Don't be afraid to put on a face. When you're new, when you're scared, when you're tired, put on a smile. Because if you keep working and you keep smiling, eventually you won't be acting anymore. People always say, fake it till you make it. But they never tell you that one day when you wake up and realize you actually made it. I no longer wear a cheer face. I feel everything behind it. Thank you.
My last name survived wars, oceans, and generations, but it did not survive attendance. Every first day of school, I would sit at my desk, waiting for my teacher to pause, squint at the paper, and say everything but my last name. Hi, My name is Shailene Tadok. T-Z-A-D-O-K Tadok. I've said it enough times in my own attendance sheet. Still, no matter how many times I've said it, somehow it always comes out wrong. Growing up, hearing my name being mispronounced became the norm for me. I'll give you an example. When early this year, in my English classroom, my teacher, Ms. DeGennaro, picked up the phone and announced, "Guidance needs Kayla Indich and Shailene blah." I laughed with my face becoming red and shouted, "What?" She said, that's how she said it. She couldn't pronounce her last name. By the way, this is completely normal for me. And it's not just attendance either. Substitute teachers, forget it. Doctor's offices, constant struggle. Phone calls, a lost cause. Growing up, I got used to those moments. The pauses, the nervous laughs, the "I'm so sorry if I say this wrong." Every time, I smiled politely and said, "It's fine," even though it didn't feel fine. I didn't want to make anyone uncomfortable or seem difficult, so I stayed quiet. But deep down, it embarrassed me. My face would heat up, and I'd want to shrink into my seat. Every time someone struggled with my name, I felt like I was the problem. It's funny, something as small as a name can make you feel like you stand out in the worst way. I'd sit there, wishing my name could just sound normal like everyone else's, so I wouldn't have to go through the awkward silence or apologetic stares. I learned to laugh it off and joke about it before anyone else could, but the more it happened, the more normal it became. Hearing my name said wrong, pretending it didn't bother me, and convincing myself it wasn't a big deal. It's just a name, I tell myself, but it isn't just a name. It's a part of who I am, and every time I brushed it off, it felt like I was brushing off a piece of myself too. What I didn't realize back then was that my last name wasn't just a jumble of letters teachers couldn't pronounce. It was a piece of my family's story. My family had lived in Iraq for many generations until the early 1950s when persecution forced them to leave. In 1951, my great-great-grandfather brought his family to Israel, hoping for safety and a new start. When officials asked for his last name, he said Tzadik, but instead, they wrote Tadok. And just like that, our name changed. It's a small difference, just one letter, but to me, it holds an entire story of survival and the journey that brought my family to where we are today. This name, that crossed oceans with my dad, has allowed my sister and I to carry it here with pride. My name isn't something to not mention or hide. It's a part of who I am, and every time I let it be mispronounced without correction, I was letting a piece of that history fade. Our job isn't to make ourselves feel smaller so others feel comfortable. It's to stand tall in who we are and embrace the individuality of ourselves and others. We shouldn't let go of the parts of ourselves that are unique just to make life easier for someone else. When we embrace who we are, we give others permission to do the same. Now when someone says it wrong, I don't laugh or stay silent. I smile, say it clearly, proudly, and more than once if I have to. Because it isn't just about a name. It's about respect, identity, and the courage to be seen as who you truly are. So even though it'll be the last time I say it, it is Tadok, and I'm forever proud of what that means. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Emily, and I'm type A. And I don't mean I like to use a planner type A. I mean it's actually a little scary type A. Type A is someone who is organized and likes to carefully plan every little thing. That's me. Like, I don't just plan. I plan the plan. I make a checklist for my checklist. Some people go with the flow. I am the flow. I schedule the flow. I realized I might have had a problem not too long ago. Billie Eilish was scheduled to perform at UBS Arena, and I obviously was going to get tickets. I bought general admission tickets, which means first come, first serve. The first people in line get the barricade, and I wasn't going to be one of the first people in line. I was going to be the first person in line. So, what did I do? Well, 5 days before the concert, I drove to UBS Arena just to see the route I would be taking on concert day. Saying this out loud, I realized how intense this may sound, and I hate to admit it, but I actually did 2 of these test drives just to check for traffic patterns and, to see if an extra highway appeared on a Tuesday. Then, on the day of, I woke up at 4:50 a.m. I camped outside the arena in the freezing cold with snacks, blankets, and the crazy confidence of a girl who's had way too much caffeine. By 10 a.m., I was sitting there thinking, this is fine, totally normal behavior. But you know what? It worked. I got to the front row. Was it a little extra? Yes. Would I do it again? in a heartbeat. Because here's the secret about being type A. We don't do it because we love control. We do it because we refuse to do things halfway. If I'm going to a concert, I'm making it the best concert ever. If I'm making plans with friends, every second of that day will count. My campers and I plan to take a trip to the University of Maryland. Guess who picked out the train times, the hotels, the restaurants, and the entire itinerary? Me, the type A friend. I'm also that person when taking group photos. I'm the one shouting, okay, everyone move in, squeeze to the left, stop blinking. I know, at the moment, I'm annoyed. And my friends are all rolling their eyes. But 3 minutes later, when they post that perfect photo on Instagram, they say thank you. Because being type A isn't about being uptight. It's about making sure we get the most out of everything we do. I don't want life to just be good or okay. I need it to be amazing. I'll admit, sometimes it drives me crazy. I've come up with a solution for every hypothetical problem. You wouldn't know it from my messy backpack or my overstuffed binders, but inside my head, it's a spreadsheet. But you know what? When Billie Eilish came out on stage, and I was right there, front row, staring her in the face, I realized something. The world needs to go with the flow of people to make life fun, but you need that type A person to make life happen. So, to all my fellow planners, list makers, and 4 AM Billie Eilish fans, don't apologize for being extra. Plan the plan, schedule the flow, make it amazing. Thank you.
Isn't just a thing, it's a lifestyle. And everyone counts down until the day they leave like it's Christmas in June. So naturally, when it was my turn to go, I thought I was about to live the dream. 7 weeks of nonstop fun, right? Wrong. I cried every day, hated the bugs, hated the food, and realized that my favorite camp activity was actually just calling my parents. But don't worry, I still stayed the full 7 weeks. And turns out, my happy place wasn't in a bunk with 10 girls upstate, but rather cooking pancakes in the kitchen with my mom. And honestly, let me tell you, I think I got the better deal, because those pancakes were better than any canned food I have ever had. If you really know me, you know that I love spending time with my parents and my brothers probably more than a normal person should admit. So yeah, you could imagine, those 7 weeks away from home weren't easy. When my brothers Danny and Matthew leave the house for camp each summer, it feels like someone pressed a mute button on my house. Suddenly, my dad wasn't yelling at them to get haircuts every week. There was no one to laugh with when my mom asked what the word low-key meant and why we speak in our own teenage language. And certainly no Danny and Matthew fighting over how much time they each get in the bathroom. So yeah, maybe I complained about them while they were here, but as soon as they left, I realized I actually kind of like having them around. Just don't tell them I said that, even though it's pretty obvious because I'm still the only sibling crying at the bus stop when it's time to say goodbye each summer. So, I know what it feels like to be the odd one out, because I've lived through it for 6 summers straight. Picture this. It's the first day of summer break. Everyone's posting in their camp shirts, hugging their camp friends, screaming, "See you in 7 weeks." And then there's me, sitting at home. Or actually, I still have to go to the bus stop to say goodbye to my brothers. So in addition to being an only child over the summer, I was also one of the only kids left in town every single summer. At first, it felt like I had missed the memo on how to be normal. Everyone else loved camp. They couldn't stop talking about color war, camp boyfriends, dance-offs. Meanwhile, I was sitting over here thinking, I don't get it. There's not even air conditioning. But then I realized something significant, that my kind of normal was just different. Not going back to camp wasn't an easy decision. It felt like I had been breaking some unspoken rule of childhood. But it ended up being one of the best choices that I ever made, because it taught me something that I didn't even know I needed to learn: how to trust myself. I realized that just because everyone else was doing something didn't mean I had to do it too. Being different doesn't mean being wrong. It means being brave enough to listen to your voice when it sounds a little bit different from everyone else's.
So many people think that fitting in will make them feel happy. We think that if we like what everyone else likes, we'll feel accepted. But the truth, you can't find real happiness in pretending to love someone else's dream. So when I stopped trying to love what everyone else loved and did what actually made me happy, everything changed. I found confidence, I found peace, and I made the best memories and friendships going to day camp. I realized that my kind of normal was having the best day at camp, coming home to have dinner with my parents, and being able to take a shower for more than 4 minutes. So thanks to me being a homebody, I ended up making a lifetime full of memories right here at my day camp. And honestly, we had the best time. Endless laughs, inside jokes that still make no sense, and of course, the summer of COVID, when we were constantly told to stay in our own bubbles. We went on trips to Hershey and Boston, ate way too much junk food, and somehow managed to get in trouble, although we were doing exactly what we were told. So even though each summer I still find myself standing at the bus stop, waving goodbye to my brothers like I'm in some kind of emotional movie scene, and then making the painful 2-hour drive up for visiting day, it only reminds me that staying home was definitely the best choice for me. So here's what I learned. Different isn't bad, it's just different. It means that you're choosing what's right for yourself, even when it's not the popular choice. If everyone were the same, life would be painfully boring. Could you imagine a world where everyone posted the same dances on TikTok and wore the same exact clothing? Yikes. Being different makes you interesting. It makes you you. So whether you're different is skipping camp or loving something weird like cooking pancakes in the kitchen with your mom, own it, because normal is overrated. Thank you.
Lavas, take given in, or hi, how are you? For those of you in the audience who didn't understand what I just said, and I would bet a lot of money that it's all of you except my lovely mom, the language you just heard was Lithuanian, which is a language I would also bet a lot of money on that you've never heard of before. Lithuania is a small country in Eastern Europe with a total population of 2.8 million people. For reference, the United States has a total population of 340.1 million people. Not to be that annoying girl who flexes how niche her culture is or anything. In fact, even though the country is small, it has an immersive culture filled with my favorite family and friends. However, I haven't always felt this way. For those of you who don't already know, my mom is an immigrant from Lithuania. She moved here in the early 2000s to start a new life together with my dad. My mom's entire side of the family still lives in Lithuania, and I guess that's where my talk truly begins. As a first-generation American, I was subjected to the usual cliches. The emphasis on grades, the unheard of food during lunchtime, and of course, the yearly pilgrimage to visit all the families still living abroad. All things that at first made me hesitant to embrace that side of myself because, after all, what kid wants to be different? So, from ages 5 to 9, if somebody asked me where I was from, I would simply reply with, America. Real original, right? However, it wasn't completely unwarranted. At the time, Lithuania felt like a completely different world to me. The transition from suburban New York to post-Soviet Lithuania proved to be incredibly shocking. After landing in the vibrant city of Vilnius, the drive to my grandparents' apartment in Kaunas was like stepping back in time. The view outside of the car window quickly shifted from a technicolored city to black, white, or rather gray suburbs. It felt as if I'd been caught between a world that was my home and one that was completely unknown. It took me years to finally realize that I wasn't caught between two worlds, I was part of two worlds. Lithuania, although dim in the eyes of a child, provides the outline for the person of who I am, the defining structure that allows me to fill in with the color of my experiences, ultimately composing a picture of myself that includes both America and Lithuania. And thus began the love for my culture and the key talking point when it came time to tell the class something new about myself on the first day of school. If you knew me in elementary school, you knew that for years I almost became insufferable. If I met somebody new, I just had to tell them that I was Lithuanian, and well, I guess I'm still doing this now. I promise I don't do it to be annoying, I do it because I love where I'm from. I love speaking Lithuanian, although I am not entirely fluent, which is something you will never hear me say again, because it's one of the oldest living languages, and it connects me to my history and family. I even feel a deep connection to the beautiful nature.
From peaceful seaside trips with my great-grandfather to my grandparents' cottage where I plant potatoes and eat berries from the vine, being Lithuanian provides me with a unique opportunity to understand what it means to live life to the fullest. The world extends far beyond our bubble in Belric, and although I first achieved this through neglected trips to Lithuania, today I desire to understand the nuances of an evolving world. It shapes how I see communities differ from my own, teaches me resilience, and reminds me of the importance of family and culture. All values that I think everybody can benefit from in a world that is arguably more complicated than ever. We all come from different backgrounds with different traditions and cultures, and although it may not be something we think about frequently, we should take pride in knowing that we can wear our cultures on our sleeves every single day. Thank you so much.
In my hands are two objects that tell the story of my family. On the one hand, there is a watch from my grandpa, whom I know very well, known to my family as Papa Harvey. On the other hand, there's a baseball from my great-grandpa Mo, a man who I only know through stories. Although these objects come from opposite sides of my family, they've helped shape values focused on hard work and leaving a legacy. One measures time, and the other captures a moment in time. My grandpa passed away when I was only 11 years old. He was one of those people who did not need to explain how hardworking he was, you could just tell by how they lived. For decades, he worked as a baker in Brooklyn at his own bakery named Butterbun Bakery. Every morning, he would wake up long before everyone else in the family, and every evening, he would come home long after everyone else. When he finally retired, the Bakers Association presented him with this watch. On the back, it says, "In appreciation for your outstanding service to specialty bakery owners." This watch was given to him in 1986. To most people, it's just an old watch, but to me, it represents decades of effort, patience, and pride in doing something the right way. These values earned my grandfather the watch, and every time I see it, it reminds me to carry them as well. When I think about my grandfather, there's one memory that I always come back to. One afternoon, he taught me how to play chess. For hours, we sat on my playroom floor and learned how to play the game. When we finally played a game, after a few moves, 7 to be exact, I somehow managed to beat him. I was so proud of myself. Little 8-year-old me thought I was a genius. But as I got older, I realized the obvious. He let me win. He didn't need to tell me that he let me win. He just smiled, congratulated me, and said, beginner's luck. Looking back on it, this small moment means a lot to me. To him, it wasn't about the game. It was about making those around him feel good about themselves. That's what this watch reminds me of. Hard work builds a good life, but the kindness and patience that create good relationships turn a good life into a great, fulfilling life. When I think about this watch now, I think about how I want to live my life. I want to work hard, to value time, and to put my family first, just like Papa did. And one day, I hope to pass this watch down to one of my kids, so they can remember where they come from and what truly matters in life. Now, on the other side of my family, there's the baseball from my great-grandpa Mo. Unlike my grandpa, I never got to meet him. He passed away in 2003, years before I was born. However, his story is one that I've heard my whole life. Mo Biller was a postal worker who began his career in 1937. He passed away in 2003, years before I was born. In 1970, postal workers across the country went on strike on an unprecedented event. They were fighting for fair pay and for better working conditions. Mo Biller helped lead the strike, standing up for thousands of men and women who felt overlooked. This strike would change how the U.S. postal system operated forever. Years later, his leadership and courage were recognized in many ways. On August 12, 1991, he was invited to throw out the ceremonial first pitch at a Chicago White Sox game. This baseball, the one you see right now, is from that very moment. When I think about it, that pitch wasn't just a small honor. It was a symbol. It was a way to thank my great-grandpa for what he had done and to applaud him for standing up for what was right. Because of him, people's lives are better. There's even a building named after him in Washington, D.C., the Mo Biller Post Office building. I visited this building with my family, and it was a very special moment for all of us. To me, the baseball isn't just a small piece of history. It's a reminder of the power of true bravery. True bravery is standing up for something even when it's not easy. And although I never met him, the baseball and the stories make me feel like I know him and make me know that he's someone that I can look up to. So now, you may be wondering, what can a watch and a baseball possibly have in common? At first glance, not much. One keeps ticking every second, marking time as it passes. The other is frozen in time, one single moment preserved forever. But both objects carry stories of both time and meaning. The watch tells the story of a man who dedicated every minute of his life to both his craft and his family. The baseball tells the story of a man who made his moment count and used it to change the lives of others for better. Together, they remind me that life is made up of both moments and minutes. Moments that define us and minutes that build us. They also remind me that legacy isn't just about fame or recognition, it's about impact, about how we make others feel, and about how our values live on in others long after we're gone. So now, I want you to think about what your watch or your baseball could be. Maybe it's a letter, a photo, or a piece of jewelry. Anything that connects you to someone else or that shapes how you are in any way. To others, these objects don't seem important, but to us, they carry stories. They remind us where we come from, what we stand for, and what we hope to pass on. So think about what your watch or your ball could be. Tell its story, keep it alive, because these stories, these memories, are how legacies live on. And maybe, one day, the stories that we keep alive will become someone else's heirlooms too. Thank you.
What's your name? Where are you from? Can I get a selfie? I have repeated this exact trio of questions at least 50 times throughout the past 3 years at BBYO's international conventions. Initially, I thought of these words as only typical icebreaker phrases, brief lines in which one could get to know people. Yet gradually, those little instances evolved to represent something substantially more. They became doors to various worlds, different cultures and identities, and unexpected friendships. One of the very first people who I encountered through this manner was Vanya, a teenage boy who I happened to share a breakfast table with at an international convention in Orlando. Immediately after I requested a selfie from him, he looked at me and he declared, "I heard you Americans are bad at geography." Feeling slightly offended and very much competitive, I asked him, "Where did you hear that?" And then he just shrugged, "Somewhere on the internet." So obviously, I turned proving him wrong into my personal goal. I located each of the maybe 40 flags that were hanging around the room, and I was able to name every single one of them. When I was done, he looked not only shocked, but intrigued. And such intrigue became the medium that has led to a friendship going through the years and miles since. That was just a brief moment. Nevertheless, it did an immense amount of work for me. It revealed to me that nowadays, when you shatter a stereotype, whether it being yours or somebody else's, you open the door to real understanding. After about a year, I was still longing for such a curiosity, and thus I went beyond the scope of BBYO and I found it in a new environment. I was in Spain, volunteering, teaching English to Spanish teenagers. And when I had heard that most of the other volunteers I was going to be with were from Dublin, Ireland, I immediately started overthinking. Should I be open about being Jewish? I've heard numerous stories of Ireland being a notoriously anti-Semitic place, and the night before the trip I was sitting with that very fear. Would they just not care? Or would they judge me? Maybe worse. After our first day there, when we had exchanged our social media details, I realized that they would come to know this about me. And therefore, I got ready for the jokes and remarks to immediately follow. But rather than that, they started asking questions. Genuine, thoughtful questions. What does kosher mean? What are Jewish holidays like? What traditions did you take part in? It was a complete surprise to me. I had constructed an entire story in my head based on my own assumptions, but I wasn't stereotyped. I was treated with real interest in who I actually was. That interaction made me see how often we think that when we come to a new situation, we will immediately be judged. But rather than that, we are met with curiosity, and all of our overthinking just vanishes. So when I came back to International Convention the following year, I had already trained myself to meet new people without making any assumptions at all. But to be honest, when it was mentioned to me that the German delegation was one of the largest at International Convention, my thoughts immediately revolved around the persecution of Jews in the Holocaust. It was not something that I verbalized, but it was there. I was wondering what it would be like to have a conversation with Jewish teens whose families had lived in the same place where the darkest moments of Jewish history had happened. I thought these conversations would be tense, maybe even heavy and uncomfortable. But as it turns out, when I had actually befriended some of them, nothing I had anticipated was true. Instead of heaviness, there were laughs. Instead of feeling uneasy, there was bonding. Yes, the past was one of the things that made up their identity, and they acknowledged it. but it was not the way they chose to view their lives every day. We talked about school, our homes, our BBYO chapters, and everything in between. It was surprisingly normal. I had the chance to talk to a young guy named Leon from the small town of Rottweil, and he told me something that really stuck in my mind. He said that the experience of being a Jewish teen in Germany today is deeply comprehending the past, but not letting it define you. It is living the German life to the fullest, while at the same time creating a bright and lively Jewish future. This interaction was unexpected and profound. It had taught me that history does not define a people. A conversation can connect us. And that revelation had a huge impact on me. It made me more at ease in revealing my Jewish self, more willing to ask questions, and more enthusiastic about creating links between different cultures. Every selfie that I took was more than just a picture. It was a story. It was a way of remembering that a small, unplanned moment can lead to understanding that does not recognize borders, languages, or assumptions. Each of my more than 50 selfies were the foundation of my fascination with the world. They are what is leading me to a future in international relations where curiosity is not just encouraged, but indispensable. So, the next time you are in a situation with people you may not know, from places you may not understand, I want you to walk up to a completely random person and ask them, what's your name? Where are you from? Can I get a selfie? Because if there is anything I have learned, it is that these 3 questions might just be the start of bringing the world a little closer together. Thank you.
Have you ever fallen so in love with something that you forget to love yourself in the process? Like, it starts off as this thrilling experiment almost, something different and interesting. But as the spark continues to fester, does it ever just leave you feeling burnt out? That's how I felt earlier this year. Every day I'd wake up, go to school, stay late, go straight to work, eat at home, go to sleep, and repeat. That was my life. I'd see my parents once a day, twice if I was lucky, usually for about 2 or 3 minutes before I ran back out the door. And it wasn't like anyone forced me to do that, to take those kinds of hours. I chose to. I chose to because I love what I do. I'm a filmmaker. I do video stuff here at school and the same for work. It's how I tell stories. It's how I feel the most comfortable making art. But somewhere down the line, that love and admiration turned into pressure. I'd be up editing at 1 in the morning, exhausted out of my mind, and still telling myself I was loving everything I was working on. For some bizarre reason, somewhere down in my head, slowing down meant I didn't care enough. Overworking yourself mentally also comes at a physical cost. People around me started noticing that I looked tired. My parents, my friends, my girlfriend, even my boss. They could all tell the kind of toll that stress was taking on me. They all said that if I kept working like this, it would only result in burnout, and they were right. I agreed with everything they had to say too. But it didn't feel that bad just yet, so why slow down now? It's funny how normal that can start to feel. When you're an artist, people praise you for keeping busy. They call it drive or dedication, but sometimes it's not dedication. Sometimes it's self-destruction just up as ambition. Can we take a moment to recognize how insane that is? Artists getting praised for self-destruction like that? There was one night, and I still remember this vividly. I was sitting at my desk, editing footage for a project I had been obsessed with. It was quiet, and everyone else was asleep. And I just stared at my screen for a long time. Constant work had become such a common rhythm to me, and I think that's when it got to me. I couldn't tell if I was working because I wanted to, or because I didn't know how not to. You see, ever since middle school, really, I've always had some kind of big project on the horizon that I've loved to chip away at. After years of that, in now my senior year, I'm already committed to college, and with it, I no longer have a big project on the horizon. In its place, I've taken on dozens of smaller projects at once, which led to that toxic vitality and later on, that epiphany. I realized that I was working nonstop because I didn't know how not to. I realized that I had turned something that made me happy into something that made me tired. And worse, I couldn't even tell when that switch happened. After that, I had to figure out a way to not let that happen again. So, after a lot of thinking, here is the ideal time management solution that I can guarantee will work for everyone. Nothing. It's nothing. There never will be, and there never is, a one-step time management solution that I can guarantee will work for everyone. Everyone's time management is completely unique to them. What works for you might not work for me. What worked for me was limiting myself to only so many projects a month, keeping a tighter eye on my schedule and writing up a whole personal checklist. Some of you, however, would hate that kind of structure. I learned to stop treating exhaustion like a trophy. And when I eventually slowed down for my art, I realized that my art quality actually improved right alongside it. There's nothing you win for being the most overworked person in the room. In art especially, some people might say that slowing down and taking that kind of break makes you lazy or not serious enough about your career. But I found it to be the opposite. Slowing down means taking care of that part of you that loves to create. So, if you're someone that's been running on fumes and pushing yourself with the mindset that that's what makes you great, hear me when I say this. You don't have to break for it. And you don't have to suffer to make your work mean something. The best way to take care of your art is by taking care of yourself first. Art isn't going anywhere, and what you love will be there when you get back. Thank you.
I've never owned a dog before, but I really do love them. Well, obviously you all know that, my title is called Wild Dogs. Who even makes this their presentation? I love dogs? This was such a bad idea. Oh, and now you're all probably judging me, going that this girl has the worst cougar talk ever. I'm sorry, I already messed up. Steven, can we just change the slide real quick? Sorry, everyone. That was an example of the thoughts that go through my head every waking second of the day. Hi, my name is Michaela Bowman, and I struggle with extreme anxiety. Now, I know you might be thinking, everyone has anxiety in today's world, but I've actually struggled with anxiety since I was 5 years old. I found out I had anxiety after I went to see a movie with my mom. There was a lady about 5 rows behind us, and she was sitting alone. I thought she was going to kidnap me. I mean, why else would a grown adult woman go to see a children's movie by herself? I started shaking and crying and hiding into my mom's shoulder until we left. And as we walked out, I realized that I just missed the opportunity to spend a fun day with my mom because of the untrue thoughts in my head. That is the story of how I met my enemy. And sadly, that would not be the only time I'd let my enemy prevent me from being happy. Growing up with anxiety is not easy, but in high school especially, it's even worse. I can't socialize without overthinking the entire interaction. Every micro movement on the other person's face, if it was being too much or not enough. It didn't matter what it was because I would analyze it all. My enemy in my head would tell me that I failed the conversation, that the other person's eyes were wandering too much, so they were obviously looking for a way to escape the story that they weren't even interested in listening to. The enemy won, and now I'm only talking to people who I know will talk to me. And I stopped trying to meet new people because my enemy would tell me how annoying I am. My enemy had officially isolated me in my first year of high school, and that was just the beginning. I started to refuse to try anything new because my enemy would tell me that I would get rejected, that nobody would accept me. And yet again, I believed it. So every day when the bell rang at 2:15 p.m., I went home. I sat alone on weekends, stalking social media, wishing that I wasn't nervous enough to go out. But I knew that if I tried, my enemy would stop me. So there I sat, alone in my room, every day, drowning in my own self-pity, blaming myself for not having the confidence that every other teenage girl my age had. This cycle was on repeat for 3 full years. My enemy was in full control of my life, and there was nothing I could do to stop her. It wasn't until the second half of junior year that things started to change. I don't know why I did, but I decided to join a club that I used to love, drama club, which I know is kind of ironic. A girl with major anxiety is able to perform in front of a large audience. Anyway, I was at auditions for the musical, absolutely freaking out in the practice room, while my enemy just screamed at me, "Go home. It's gonna be a mess." I wanted to turn around, I wanted to leave, but it was too late. My name was already called to go into that room. So I walked in, I introduced myself with a shaky voice, while my enemy just laughed at me. "You are making a fool of yourself. Why did you put yourself in this position?" The laughing and taunting slowly started to get muffled by a song. It was the song I was singing for my audition, and all of a sudden, my enemy had nothing to say. Fast forward 2 days later, my enemy had still been silent. Well, up until we got the notification that the cast list had been posted. I searched frantically for my name, and there I saw it. I had gotten a lead role. My enemy started talking to me again, but not in the way that I thought. She was saying, "I'm so proud, and you worked hard." Why was she being so nice to me? It took me up until this point to realize that my enemy was never really my enemy. I was the enemy. This realization opened my eyes to how powerful my anxiety really is. I mean, it had just turned me into my worst enemy. I knew from that moment on things needed to change. So I started going out again. I made new friends, I joined new clubs, and I even spoke up in class. Now, I wish I could say that this story has a happy ending, that I don't let my enemy pick on me anymore. But that's not the case. Anxiety doesn't magically go away. It's a part of who I am. But if I've learned one thing, it's that my anxiety does not get to stop me from doing the things that I love. Because trust me, I know what it's like to feel anxious. I know what it's like to feel like the world is ending based off of that 1 minute of the day that you embarrassed yourself. I know what it's like to have that little voice in the back of your head that tells you that you can't. But I'm here to show you that you can. So allow yourself to be weird. Allow yourself to talk to new people. Allow yourself to step out of your comfort zone, because the little voice in your head, it's not real. So that next time that enemy in your head tries to hold you back, tell it it's right, and then go do it anyway. Because at the end of the day, you are the only person in your way. Thank you.
Legacy. What is a legacy? It's planting seeds in a garden you never get to see. That line from Hamilton gets me every time. It's said at the ending of the show, during that infamous duel between Alexander Hamilton and Aaron Burr. But I'm not here tonight to give you a history lesson or spoil the ending of one of Broadway's most popular musicals. Instead, I want to talk about what those lyrics mean. I've seen Hamilton 3 times. I love the music, the acting, the design, and the storytelling. But what I love most about it is the way that the lyrics of the show make you think. Legacy. What is a legacy? At first, I thought legacy meant being remembered for big accomplishments, like awards or leadership positions. Last spring, I was elected student government president, and in the months leading up to this school year, I spent a lot of time focused on the events we were going to organize and the money we would need to raise. It's easy to get caught up in that because, sure, that could be one's legacy. But the more that I thought about it, the more I realized that's not the kind of legacy that I want to leave. When I look back on the moments that have mattered most to me, it's not the titles or the projects that stand out. It's the happiness I feel in my interactions with others. The laughter, the shared energy, the positivity, It was never just about achievements. It was about people. About the times I made someone smile, or when someone's laugh turned my whole day around. That is what legacy means to me now. Making a positive impact in every interaction, no matter how small. I want people to feel seen. I want to make them feel like they belong. And if I could do that, through a quick conversation, a shared laugh, or a smile in the hallway, then I am planting those seeds in a garden I might never get to see. Last year, I ran a fundraiser for the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society. We raised an incredible amount of money, and I was so proud of what we accomplished. But what stuck out to me the most was not the final total. It was the interactions that we had with our honored hero, Elijah. Even though Elijah was going through something unimaginably difficult, he still showed up to all of our events filled with positivity. At the end of the fundraising journey, Elijah's father spoke to the volunteers about the impact that we had. Hearing his words and seeing the emotion in his eyes got me to thinking. This idea of legacy echoed in my head. Legacy. What is a legacy? I may never know all the ways that our fundraiser helped or the lives it touched, but I do know that those seeds of hope are still growing, somewhere far beyond my view. That is the beautiful part. We may not get to control how our stories are remembered, but we do get to choose how we show up, how we lead, how we treat people, and how we make others feel. In Hamilton, there's this line near the end of the show. The world was wide enough. It is a moment of realization that life is not about competing for space or recognition, but it's about what we give to others while we are here. So when people remember me, I hope they remember me not just for my achievements, but for the kindness I shared, the laughter, and the moments of connection. My legacy. My great unfinished symphony is not complete, and it may never be. But maybe that's the point. Because every time we choose kindness, every time we lift others up, and every time we make another person's day just a little bit brighter, the music keeps playing. And that is the kind of legacy that I want to leave behind. Thank you.
I know it's been a long night, but I do want to just quickly congratulate all of these students as well, like the first one. A terrific job, and they, like their peers who went earlier, have worked incredibly hard. My thanks again to our principal, Mr. Owenberg, our department chairperson, Mrs. Donaldson, my colleagues, and of course all the parents who have supported them, and of course to all of you on a wonderful job. You did it. It's over. Thank you for coming. Have a great night.